Hi, everyone, and thanks for checking out this movie review. So, today we begin a new horror franchise that we're going to be taking a look at, and that is the Halloween franchise, all 11 films. I know there's a 12th film coming out, Halloween Kills, in about a month or so. But the first 11 films we'll be taking a look at during the month of September here. Um, yeah, today obviously we're going to be taking a look at the very first one, and that is the John Carpenter 1978 classic Halloween. Yeah, I'll just going to go through the setup and the premise as I normally do, and then I'll get into my thoughts and review, which will contain spoilers once again, so fair warning. So, Halloween is a 1978 American independent slasher film directed and scored by John Carpenter, co written with producer Deborah Hill and starring Donald Pleasance, Jamie Lee Curtis, in her film debut. The plot tells the story about a mental patient who was committed to a sanitarium for murdering his babysitting teenage sister on Halloween night when he was 6 years old. 15 years later, he escapes and returns to his hometown, where he stalks a female babysitter and her friends while under pursuit by his psychiatrist. So it's a pretty simple setup and premise. So on Halloween night, 1963, in the fictional town of Haddonfield, Illinois, 6-year-old Michael Myers inexplicably stabs his teenage sister Judith to death with a kitchen knife. For the next 15 years, he is incarcerated at Smith's Grove Sanitarium. On October 30th, 1978, Michael's psychiatrist, Dr. Samuel Loomis, and his colleague Marion Chambers arrives at the sanitarium to escort Michael to a court hearing. Loomis hopes the outcome of the hearing is that Michael will never be released from Smith's Grove. However, Michael steals their car and escapes Smith's Grove, killing a mechanic for his coveralls on his way back to Haddonfield. Upon returning home, Michael steals a white and expressionless mask from a hardware store. On Halloween, he sees high school student Laurie Strode drop off a key at the long abandoned Myers house that her father is trying to sell. Laurie notices Michael stalking her throughout the day, but her friends Annie Brackett and Linda Vanderclock dismiss the concerns. Loomis arrives in Haddonfield in search of Michael and finds Judith's tombstone missing from the local cemetery. He meets with Annie's father, Sheriff Lee Brackett, and they investigate Michael's house, where Loomis tells Brackett that Michael is pure evil. Brackett is doubtful of the danger, but goes to patrol the streets while Loomis waits at the house, expecting Michael to return. That night, Laurie babysits Tommy Doyle and Annie babysits Lindsay Wallace across the street. So that's sort of the setup and the premise of the film. Very effective setup and premise. The movie kind of goes from there as he's basically stalking Laurie and her friends. So the cast of this movie, we have Donald Pleasance, of course, as Dr. Sam Loomis, Jamie Lee Curtis as Laurie Strode, Nick Castle as Michael Myers slash The Shape, Tony Moran also as Michael Myers when he's unmasked in the film, and Will Sandon as Michael Myers at age 6, the beginning of the film. Also, P.J. Souls as Linda Vanderclock, and Nancy Caius as Annie Brackett. So yeah, that's Halloween 1978, John Carpenter's film, and what can you say about this movie? It's one of the great iconic horror movies of all time. Really, probably one of the great movies of all time. Period. I have a lot of pros to go over, needless to say. So this movie ultimately is a suspenseful thrill ride from the beginning all the way to the end. From the opening scene where we get the POV shots of somebody walking around outside of this house, and then ultimately coming to his sister and stabbing him, as we would find out it would be, this young woman in her bedroom, all the way to the end where Michael is shot off the balcony and we look down and well, if you've seen the movie, you know what happens there. So, but yeah, just the buildup of suspense and thrills in this movie, second to none. Best horror score ever, I think so. I don't think there's a more iconic horror score, because even people that aren't horror fans, like my wife, when they hear those piano keys, the score to this movie, they know what it is. They know who's coming. They know what movie they're watching. So memorable that crosses over beyond the horror genre. So it's definitely, and besides all that being memorable and known, it's very effective in this movie. It adds to the suspense. It's a wonderfully directed film by John Carpenter. Maybe his best film, certainly one of his top three directed films, right there with The Thing and probably Christine, I would say, for my money. But yeah, just wonderfully directed. You got to bring up producer Deborah Hill too. Rest in peace, Deborah Hill. Was a large part of this first movie, along with John Carpenter as producer. She had a lot to do with its success. Um, Laurie Strode as a final girl is always mentioned as one of the great horror final girls of all time, and for good reason. Jamie Lee Curtis does a great job playing her. I think as I said earlier, it's her first movie. I believe it's her first movie, period. Certainly her first horror movie or movie of this kind. But she gives a very strong and effective, and I also think realistic portrayal of a final girl. Nothing's cheap or over the top. It's what would actually a portrayal that would actually happen if this were real going on. She does a really good job. Donald Pleasance, what can you say? Just a brilliant actor in his time, and really any time. He plays Dr. Loomis magnificently. He brings so much to an already well written character, so effectively compelling. His iconic phrases, the blackest eyes, the devil's eyes. He's just so good, so iconic in this movie. I mean, he's right there with Michael Myers as far as iconic character in these movies. Certainly, this first movie, especially. You got to talk about the great camera work and the visuals, especially for the late '70s. Just the effectiveness that it's used to the cinematography in this movie, just iconic. Um, Obviously, the villain of Michael Myers, the Shape, as they refer to him more in the first couple movies, is he's really terrifying in this movie. Part of that's the way he's played. Part of it is the mask, of course, the Shatner mask that they use in this movie. Um, just how they portray the character. Um, just a great look, very menacing. The opening sequence is really effective. If you're watching this movie for the first time, with the POV shots of a young boy, um, it immediately takes you into the film, and you wonder where it's going to go, and you have to find out. So it's just really well done. Also, the ending of the film is one of the most effective ending sequences to any horror movie ever. Um, After Loomis finally meets up with him at the end and shoots him off the balcony, and then we're left with when he looks below, we're left with the ground where he should be laying, but isn't, of course. And what people don't realize, it wasn't for sequel's sake, because when they made this movie, there was never any intention of having sequels to it. It's just a horror movie unto itself, but it just leaves the audience, as well as Loomis and Laurie Strode, just and then they show all these images, these certain areas of different houses, and you hear the breathing of in the mask, and basically saying that Michael is nowhere to be found, but he's everywhere, which is just so brilliant, just so well done, um, scary as hell. It's really a simple but extremely effective story that has realism to it. Like, this could really happen. It isn't some supernatural thing, not yet anyway. In this movie, it's just somebody that something's not right behind the eyes, and it's unfortunately these people exist, and that's what makes it more terrifying. Um, the ending really leaves the viewer scared and wanting more, not necessarily. Now, when I say wanting more, it doesn't necessarily mean wanting more sequels, but of course, as we would get, but just wanting more in terms of, wow, that was just, it takes your breath away at the end. And just a horror movie done right, especially the ending. The fact that it's a low budget movie to an independent movie that didn't cost a lot to make definitely makes it more real and adds to the effectiveness and the scares of this movie. The fact you have a motiveless killer, that they don't explain why he's doing what he does, from even at the beginning, like Loomis says, he's just pure evil, plain and simple. That makes him so much more scary and effective. No reason for what he does. Um, and unfortunately, as the series would go on, they would try to give us reasons, which would make it less effective and scary. I'll get into that as I get into those movies. But iconic kills, even though there's no blood or gore in the kills, they're more like strangulations. They're just you just don't see a lot of blood in this movie anyway. But the most iconic kill has to be the one, of course, where he stabs the guy up against a cupboard, and Michael turns his head watching him as he hangs there and dies. It's just very, very creepy, very iconic. And it's a fantastic setting, and with a small American town setting and a great Halloween atmosphere with the light and the dark and just the different images that we see, the different atmosphere, very claustrophobic in this small town area with the stalker. So, yeah, just can't really say enough about the pros of this movie. Halloween. There's a few cons, not many. Some of them I had to search for, and to be honest with you, these are more general cons that some people might have. They're not really cons for me. The first one kind of is some of the acting by Laurie's friends, namely Nancy Kias as Annie Brackett, isn't very good, nor the actress that plays Michael Myers' sister at the beginning of the film as she gets stabbed. Pretty bad acting there. Also, some pretty cringy, questionable dialogue, mostly delivered by her friends. I don't think it's necessarily as badly written as it is just badly delivered, which goes back to the acting. This isn't really a con for me, but for some people, especially younger people nowadays, there's not a lot of blood or gore in this movie. In fact, I'm not sure there's any, to be honest with you. But to me, there doesn't need to be. A horror movie isn't defined by how much gore is in it. It's defined on how effective the story is told and how effectively scary it is. And but that could definitely be a con for younger people that are used to movies nowadays, the old hack and slash, blood and gore from beginning to end. And I know that some people mentioned there's a few slower parts in the middle of this movie. Again, not a con for me, but compared to today's fast pace, trying to give the audience what they want. But at this time, the slow buildup is what makes this movie so iconic. And I don't personally think that any of those slower moments in the middle are all that are necessarily cons to this movie. But like I said, those are just some more general cons that people have or will bring up that are used to more modern 2000s horror movies. But yeah, overall, guys, what can you say about this movie? John Carpenter's 1978 Halloween movie, one of the best horror movies ever made, one of the best movies, period, ever made, in my opinion. So effective because of its low budget, um, cinematography, iconic villain, iconic character with Dr. Loomis and Laurie Strode. This movie has it all, and from beginning to end, just it's a must watch every year. Um, it basically goes beyond just a horror genre. I mean, people that don't like horror movies will still watch this at Halloween, my wife included. Yeah, I just can't praise it enough. It's definitely one of Carpenter's top two or three movies. You could argue it's his best movie. I think The Thing is a little better for me. But this is right up there. So this is a 10 out of 10 movie. I mean, I can't even give it a 9.5. I'd be lying personally. It's as iconic as the holiday itself. 10 out of 10 for me for the original Halloween from 1978, John Carpenter. Go ahead and comment down below. Give me your thoughts on this movie and what you would rate it. Um, Please like and subscribe, like this video, and hit the little notification bell to see my next Halloween reviews. And please subscribe to my channel to see future horror movie reviews and ranking videos as well, as especially with my 31 for 31 coming up in the month of October for my horror collection. So thank you for watching this video. Stay scared. Bye.